Recent Ukrainian drone strikes have shut down Russian energy facilities that supply at least 17% of Russia's refining capacity, or about 1.1 million barrels per day, Reuters reports. The agency reviewed Ukrainian attacks in recent weeks on key energy facilities in Russia. In August, the Ukrainian military reported a fire near the Syzran Oil Refinery in the Samara region, which had a processing capacity of 8.5 million tons per year before the incident. On August the 15th, the military also said it had struck the Syzran Oil Refinery. The Syzran Refinery has since suspended production and crude oil deliveries. Two industry sources confirmed to Reuters. On Saturday, the Ukrainian Armed Forces recorded multiple explosions and a fire at the Krasnodar Oil Refinery, which annually produces 3 million tons of light petroleum products. Local authorities reported a small fire at the Slavyansk Oil Refinery in the region on August the 13th, caused by debris from a destroyed drone. In the same region, drone debris caused a fire at the Afipsky refinery on August the 7th. Debris also fell on Russia's Ilsky oil refinery in the Krasnodar region as a result of a drone attack on July the 7th. Russia's Ust-Luga oil and gas terminal in the Baltic Sea will operate at a capacity of about 350,000 barrels a day in September, about half of its normal capacity after damage to pipeline infrastructure from Ukrainian drone attacks, two industry sources told Reuters. After the Ukrainian military struck the Unecha oil pumping station in the Bryansk region, supplies through the Soviet Druzhba oil pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia were interrupted. The Ukrainian military said on August the 13th that its drone had hit the Unecha pumping station. Damage and a large fire were reported. However, crude oil transportation through the Druzhba pipeline system was not affected at the time. In August, Russian authorities reported a fire after a drone struck an industrial facility in the city of Novoshaktinsk, where the local oil refinery is located. The Ukrainian military said on August the 14th that it had carried out a drone strike on an oil refinery in the Volgograd region, causing large-scale fires. The refinery, which is operated by Lukoil, was forced to suspend operations for just over a week in February over the strike. Ukraine said it struck a refinery in the Saratov region on August the 10th, causing an explosion and fire. The exact extent of the damage is unknown. The refinery had already suspended fuel production in February after a previous attack. A Ukrainian drone hit an oil depot in Sochi on August the 3rd. Two oil tanks caught fire, but the fire was later extinguished. The August the 2nd Ukrainian drone strike on the Novokubishevsk oil refinery, which belongs to Rosneft, completely halted primary oil refining. The Ryazan refinery, also operated by Rosneft, shut down about half its refining capacity on August the 2nd after a Ukrainian drone attack. The plant has been a target for many years, shutting down in late January, again in February after previous drone attacks. As media reported, systematic strikes by Ukrainian drones on oil refineries in Russia have led to a significant reduction in fuel production and an increase in its prices. According to reports, workers at Russian oil refineries are now afraid to go to work.
The Ukrainian Air Force has identified and targeted another position of the occupying Russian army in the occupied territory of Kherson region. A fighter jet belonging to the Air Force struck a control post located in a grain storage area, used by drone operators, with a US-made JDAM air bomb. As a result of the strike, the building was destroyed, along with the Russian soldiers and military equipment inside. It is worth noting that Ukrainian airstrikes against Russian army positions have intensified both in the occupied territories and in Russia's border regions. A significant number of Russian personnel and military equipment have been destroyed as a result of these strikes using Western-manufactured air bombs.
Russia's plans indicate their final transition to the principles of using assault groups as the basis for warfare. This was stated by Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council. According to the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council, the Russians are trying to increase recruitment for contracts, including luring conscripts and foreigners. In addition, the Russian army is relying more on motorcycles, buggies, and other vehicles instead of armored vehicles. They are doing all this because in kill zones, armor and people are quickly destroyed by drones, and the only way to pass a zone of 5 to 15 kilometers is on such transport. But there are enough drones now to burn such scooter riders. However, similar plans, which Belousov announces in the Russian Federation, indicate the final transition of the Russians to the principles of using assault groups as the basis for war, the Post says. According to Andriy Kovalenko, this is not critical. Enemy assault groups are operating in the east. They are being destroyed. On the contrary, the Russians are striving to reduce their losses. In general, the mass use of drones, especially those with artificial intelligence, will finally change the role of infantry in war. It seems that this will happen next year, Kovalenko added. He noted that all actions of the Russians indicate that they do not plan to end the war. The West, I hope, understands this, and they plan to wage war not only against us, summarized the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council. According to the analysis, while Russia can replenish its troop numbers through aggressive recruitment, its defensive industry cannot produce new tanks and fighting vehicles fast enough to replace staggering battlefield losses, which have exceeded 20,000 units. Having already depleted its best Soviet-era stockpiles, the Russian army is now resorting to meet assaults with unarmored civilian vehicles, a desperate tactic that highlights a fatal flaw in its war-fighting capability and signals a coming crisis. There are still many older Russian vehicles left in some storage yards, but many of these are even older than those that have been mobilized. Satellite analysis shows that some, if not most, of what remains in these Russian storage yards are armored vehicles that have not moved in years. At current costs, refurbishing them is not financially feasible. They are little more than scrap metal,